There is a specific kind of tiredness that sleep cannot reach, a heaviness that no amount of rest seems to lighten. It isn't the physical fatigue of a long day's work or the temporary burnout of a demanding season. It is something deeper, more visceral, and much harder to name. It is the weariness of existing itself. Think back, if you can, to the mornings of your childhood. Do you remember the simple, unadorned ease of waking up? There was no negotiation with the daylight, no mental inventory of the energy required to be a person. You simply were. Life was a series of beginnings, not a series of maintenance tasks. But somewhere along the way, that effortless flow was replaced by a quiet, persistent exhaustion. Now, the simple act of brushing your teeth or answering a text feels like a monumental effort, a repetition that has lost its meaning. If you feel this, please know that this is not a character flaw, nor is it a sign of weakness. It is, in fact, a misunderstood form of depth. You have become acutely aware of the mechanics of existence, the gears and pulleys that keep the world turning, and once you see them, it is impossible to unsee the effort they require. The very sensitivity and high-functioning awareness that allowed you to navigate a complex, perhaps indifferent world as a child has now become the weight that sabotages you as an adult.
The hypervigilance that once kept you safe has evolved into a performance of being okay that is now draining your very will to participate in the world. To understand why existence feels like a game that is rigged, we must look at the psychological architecture of this fatigue. In clinical terms, this is often identified as existential exhaustion, a weariness that stems not from what you are doing, but from the simple, taxing fact of being conscious. It is as if your mind is a marathon runner who has realized there is no finish line, only more road, forever. When we exist in this state, we often encounter anhedonia, but with a specific, insidious twist. It isn't just an inability to feel pleasure. It is the feeling that nothing is worth the effort anymore.
Even the things you once loved now feel like obligations, just more tasks to perform to maintain the appearance of a life. This is frequently accompanied by depersonalization, a defensive mechanism where the brain creates a thick pane of glass between you and reality. You become a spectator in your own body, watching yourself move, talk, and smile, while the real you remains miles away, utterly disconnected and profoundly tired. Neurologically, this state is deeply tied to learned helplessness. When a person is repeatedly exposed to uncontrollable stress or a world that seems indifferent to their pain, the nervous system eventually undergoes a shutdown response. The brain's reward pathways become muted. It learns that effort does not lead to relief, so it stops authorizing the release of the energy required to try. This isn't laziness. It is your biology attempting to conserve what little resources you have left by withdrawing from a life that feels like an endless, unrewarding performance. You are not broken. You are a finely tuned instrument that has been played for too long, at too high a volume, without a moment of true silence. To heal this exhaustion, we cannot simply rest more. We must change the way we inhabit our own lives. We must look toward the ancient concept of apatheia, not as cold indifference, but as a freedom from the passions that exhaust us.
The Stoics taught that much of our fatigue comes from the double burden, the burden of the event itself and the secondary burden of our judgment that the event should be different. By stripping away the performance of wanting things to be different, we preserve our vital energy. Furthermore, we find solace in the principle of wu wei, or non-action. This is not laziness, It is effortless action. It is the art of sailing with the wind rather than rowing against it. When we stop trying to force our personality to fit the world's molds, we stop the leak of our internal battery. Psychologically, we must practice radical acceptance. What you resist persists. The more you fight the fatigue, the more energy you give it.
By saying, "I am tired of existing right now," and that is an honest state of being, you stop the internal civil war. You allow the spectator and the actor to finally sit in the same room together without the need for a mask. So where do you go from here? The answer isn't a grand lifestyle change or a dramatic exit. It is found in the sanctuary of the small. You must begin to reclaim your energy in microdoses. Start by identifying the performances you can stop today. Maybe it's the way you force a certain tone in an email, or the way you feel the need to fill a silence. Allow yourself to be boring. Allow yourself to be unproductive. The goal is to shift from functioning to being.
You are not a machine that has failed its output. You are a soul that is asking for its own company. The world will always demand your energy, but your first responsibility is to the flame inside you that has grown dim. Protect it. Feed it with silence, with honesty, and with the permission to simply exist without explanation. You have done enough. You are enough. The emotional price of this existential fatigue is paid in a currency that is invisible to the world, the slow, steady erosion of your authentic self. It is the weight of 1,000 I'm fines when your soul is screaming for a reprieve. It is the cost of maintaining a house that looks beautiful from the street, while the foundation is quietly crumbling into dust. Carl Jung once spoke of the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the demands of society. He argued that while the persona is necessary for survival, the danger lies in identifying with it too closely. For those tired of existing, the mask has become a prison. You have sacrificed your primordial spontaneity for the sake of belonging, believing that if you were to show the world how truly exhausted you are, you would be judged as broken or ungrateful. This creates an invisible grief. You are mourning the person you could have been if you weren't so busy just trying to survive being a person. The core fear driving this is not a fear of death, but a fear of judgment, the terrifying realization that if you stop performing, the world might have no place for you. Consequently, simple moments, a sunset, a conversation, a meal, become complex negotiations. You don't just experience them, you calculate the energy required to react to them appropriately. You are a ghost haunting your own life, trapped in the effort of pretending you are still here. These are not personality traits. They are sophisticated coping strategies forged in the fires of long-term endurance. When you have carried too much for too long, your psyche adapts by rewriting your operating manual. You might recognize these adult manifestations in your own life. The high-functioning hollow. In the workplace, you are the reliable one, the one who never misses a deadline. But this productivity is a defense mechanism. You work because stopping would force you to face the void. Yet every task feels like a mountain you are climbing with leaden boots. The distant lover. In romantic relationships, you are present but unreachable. You may experience depersonalization, feeling like a spectator watching yourself say, "I love you," through a thick pane of glass. The intimacy required to truly connect feels like a demand you simply cannot meet. The negotiated morning. Every day begins with a mental trial. You lie in bed calculating the absolute minimum amount of effort required to get through the next 16 hours. Existing is no longer a given, It is a contract you reluctantly sign every single morning. The social tax. You find yourself avoiding small talk, not because you are shy, but because "how are you?" feels like an invitation to a lie that costs you more than you can afford to pay. You have no energy left for the performance of trivialities. The invisible weight of maintenance. Basic self-care, showering, eating, answering a message, is no longer an automatic habit. It is an executive decision. To others, you look unmotivated. To yourself, you are simply out of fuel. The stoic parent or provider. You handle your responsibilities with a grim, silent determination. You endure because you have to, not because you want to, leading to a state of learned helplessness, where you have forgotten that life could ever feel like anything other than an obligation. The first step of unlearning is not to fix these behaviors, but to witness them without judgment. You must stop gaslighting yourself by calling your exhaustion laziness or weakness. Identifying the pattern, the realization that you are performing existence rather than living it, is the only way to begin loosening the grip of the mask. You are not a failure for being tired. You are a person who has been carrying the weight of the world without a place to set it down. So we arrive at the most difficult question of all. How do we begin to heal from a tiredness that seems woven into the very fabric of our being? If you are standing in this place of profound existential fatigue, the first thing you must understand is that you are not broken beyond repair. You are simply a person who has been carrying far too much for far too long without a place to set the burden down. Healing in this context is not about finding a way to push through or suddenly discovering a reservoir of hidden energy. It is about the radical act of surrender. It is about granting yourself the one thing the modern world refuses to give: permission. You need permission to not be okay. You need permission to exist at a lower capacity without the crushing weight of judgment, either from others or from the harsh critic living inside your own mind. The path back to yourself begins when you stop white-knuckling your way through every single day and acknowledge that your exhaustion is a valid, legitimate psychological state that deserves compassion, not a lecture on productivity. This is where the concept of inner child reparenting becomes a vital, practical tool. Imagine that tired, hollow version of yourself as a child who has been forced to perform on stage for years without a break. You wouldn't tell that child to try harder. You would take them off the stage, wrap them in a blanket, and let them sleep. You must become the parent who says to yourself, "You don't have to perform today. You deserve to take up space without justifying it." In the realm of professional psychology, we find hope in frameworks like existential therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. These are not quick fixes, but rather long-term reconstruction projects. Existential therapy helps you sit in the silence of a life that feels meaningless and slowly, painfully, begin to build new reasons to stay. It acknowledges that meaning isn't something you find lying in the ground. It is something you curate from the ruins. Meanwhile, ACT teaches us to stop fighting the presence of the thick pane of glass that separates us from reality. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to smash the glass, you learn to exist alongside the fatigue, choosing small, value-driven actions even when the feeling of joy is absent. However, the most profound healing often happens in the smallest, most quiet moments that don't look like work at all. We must learn to let the world be enough in its simplest forms.
When existing feels impossible, we shift our focus from the endless maintenance of being a person to the simple sensory details of the present. A warm drink in your hands, the weight of a soft blanket, or the feeling of sun on your skin. These things do not fix the existential void, but they make the current moment slightly less heavy to carry. They are small, gentle moments that act as anchors, keeping you from drifting away into the mist of depersonalization. We must also address the shadow work of our own endurance. For years, you may have hidden your exhaustion to keep those around you comfortable. You became a master of the mask, smiling at appropriate times and responding when spoken to, while drowning inside. Healing requires you to stop hiding. It requires finding people who can sit with you in the emptiness without trying to fix or solve you. There is a transformative power in being seen, truly seen, in your most depleted state, and realizing that you are still worthy of presence. When someone can witness your exhaustion without judgment, the isolation of your struggle begins to lift, making it just a little more bearable. As Carl Jung famously noted, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." In the context of existential fatigue, this becoming is not a move toward more doing, but a move toward more being. It is the choice to embrace softness in a world that demands hardness. It is the realization that your learned helplessness was actually a survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness. You learned that effort didn't matter because you were playing a rigged game. But healing is the slow process of realizing that you can step away from the game entirely. You can choose to exist at the absolute minimum and call that a victory. As we conclude this reflection, I want you to hold on to this truth. This feeling of permanent exhaustion, as heavy as it seems right now, is not always permanent. Existential fatigue can lift. It does not happen through force of will, but through the slow, patient rebuilding of support and the passage of time. One day, you might wake up and realize that the weight has shifted, even if only by a fraction. You might remember, not just with your mind, but with your body, what it feels like to actually want to be here, rather than just enduring the hours. Until that day comes, be incredibly gentle with yourself. Rest when you can. Exist at whatever pace you can manage, even if that pace feels like standing still. You are enough exactly as you are, even when you are empty, even when you are exhausted, even when you are just surviving. The goal of this journey is not to fix yourself so you can return to the same exhausting performance. The goal is to become whole, to live a life where you no longer have to pretend. The world and its endless demands can wait. For now, just breathe. Just be. That is more than enough. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to share your own experience in the comments or subscribe to join our community of thinkers and seekers. By sharing our exhaustion, we make the world a little less lonely for those who are still carrying the weight in silence. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.